Guys, welcome back to another exciting episode of Coliseum Forum. Today, I am joined by two guys I'm a huge fan of. You hear me say that a lot, but really, really mean it today. We have
Wow.
we have a dark horse mayoral candidate for Toronto, man of many
That's
names,
true.
Chip Zdarsky, as well as Roman Perez from Jane and all kinds Marvel 2, all kinds of stuff. Guys, welcome to Coliseum Forum.
Happy to be here.
I should have asked before. Are we allowed to swear on this?
PG-13. So like I think PG-13 gives you like 2 F
But
words.
I can drop like one F bomb maybe.
Yeah. I would save it for like something you really need to emphasize.
Okay. Just checking.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, obviously, the reason you guys are here today, we have a new book that just hit stands yesterday, Stillwater.
Yeah.
Ramon, for you, this is like your first big like creator-owned book, right?
My first creator-owned, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Chip, I mean, obviously, Sex Criminals, like this probably your, and then White Trees, right? So it's like third.
It's old hat for me.
Yeah, it's over.
I mean, I will point out technically it is not creator owned
Oh, it's not.
because
That's true,
no,
yeah.
because technically Skybound owns the copyright on it.
Oh wow.
Uh,
Okay.
the deal, because a lot of people do get confused as to what is creator owned, what isn't.
Yeah.
I know every company kind of has their own kind of deals. Image Comics is really the purest form of creator owned,
Right.
but divisions kind of off of that
Sure.
will vary. So with Skybound, I brought them the idea, the pitch for Stillwater, and so in agreeing to publish it, they have the copyright, but it's a profit split between all of us.
Okay.
On all the
Yeah.
gold that we
Sure.
make.
So
Yeah.
much gold.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
non-comics fans in the comics industry, that's how we actually pay for comics, is with gold coins.
Doubloons.
Doubloons,
Yeah.
right? We set out on pirate ships, we find doubloons, and then we buy comics with them.
It comes in handy during a pandemic, really.
Absolutely, you always want to be kind of fluid during
Yeah,
pandemic.
and gold is like antiseptic. It's
Right.
Like, it kills viruses.
Is it?
Oh,
I
yeah,
thought that
that's
was
good.
copper
Yeah.
or brass. So guys, Stillwater. I mean, something we had talked about in the pre-interview was like you guys have known each other for quite a while before working together on Stillwater. So let's talk about that a little bit. How do Chip Zdarsky and Roman Perez come together and like create this dream team?
Starts with an email.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've known each other for, God, almost 20 years.
Yeah,
wow.
getting there, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the Toronto comics community is pretty tight. And I was in a studio. Ramon joined in the early 2000s. And then once Ramon joined, I was like, I'm out of
He's
here.
like out of there. Yeah. I think he lasted a year by the time I got there. He's like, bye. You know?
Yeah, and at the beginning there was like 4 of us, and now it's grown. Like Ramon has turned it into this kind of massive operation in Toronto,
Oh wow.
which is super cool. So yeah, we've known each other forever,
Yeah.
and I've always wanted to work with Ramon, and we got a chance to work together on Marvel 2-in-1.
Right.
And he came in and helped us out towards the end of the run. I'm not saying he was why we got canceled, but
Correlation, causation, right?
we were not canceled. But yeah, like Ramon's he's a delight as a person, and he's an amazing artist. And
Obviously.
when we were thinking and talking about who we could bring aboard to kind of bring the story to life, Ramon was like the first pick, and luckily he said yes.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So you had if I'm understanding correctly, you had the idea for Stillwater kind of already plotted out, and then I mean, you were just like, who's gonna draw this, and we settled on Ramon.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's more than just who's going to draw this; it's who's going to be a partner in this.
Sure.
Especially with independent books like this, where you're kind of creating a whole universe and creating whole characters.
Yeah.
It goes beyond just kind of bringing an artist to just draw the words. Like Ramon is great at visualizing characters, towns, creating mood. Him and Mike, who does the colors.
Oh, yeah. He's been indispensable.
Yeah. Like it's really a partnership. So Ramon is as much, if not more, of a creator of this than I am, in terms of bringing it all to life.
Yeah, it's been great to see. Like when I came in, Chip had already written, I think, the first 3 or 4 issues, I think,
Yeah.
and it was great to see how the story and changes as you start kind of coming in, and the art is now present as before it was just a script. So it's really nice to see how it affects the growth and the, I guess, the how the story unfolds. And I think you were even saying this before, where you kind of accelerated things after you saw artwork coming in and the like,
Yeah,
and
it's hard.
colors and everything.
It's hard to get excited about the project you're working on when there's no art.
Yeah, especially
And,
with
and
like, yeah,
yeah, like I found like Skybound really wanted to have a bunch of issues in the can, both in scripts and then obviously in finals. And I think by the third script, I was like, I need to know what the characters are going to look like, how they're going to act, like because it informs where I go with the story.
Yeah.
Once they're fully realized, like I found it hard to kind of keep track of things. I would always have to kind of keep rereading my own scripts to kind of like figure out like what I'm doing. But once Ramon came on board, it's like, oh, that's who that character is. Like he's amazing at distilling the essential parts of a character.
So this is the first time I'm seeing David or the sheriff or the judge, right?
Yeah. Like they're just kind of names, and I'll have like kind of a rough visual in mind, but it's really just it's such a loose thing until you actually see it in front of you. Yeah.
So I don't
even just drawing it's the same. Like I find like you get into it, but by issue 2 or 3, after I've drawn the characters a bunch of times, that's when they start to settle into their own voice, posture, wrinkles, whatever you want to call it. They really come into their own after I've had a chance to mesh the script with the pictures and then see how they flow and stuff. I love the process of comics, so it's always interesting to see how things develop and change as the books, especially once the colors come in, you get the atmosphere and everything. It's such a wonderful process.
So did you guys sit down and it sounds like you already had some scripts in the can, but Ramon, when you came along, did you start by doing like character designs and things like that to really kind of capture who we're dealing with?
Like Chip had some notes on each character as they were introduced in the script. He'd either give me like a breakdown of like ideas for wardrobe, or maybe an actor to correlate the character to, or maybe just age or whatever it might be. He'd just give me some point form notes on each character, and then I would just kind of springboard off of that. So for the first couple of issues, I did go ahead and design some of the characters, or at least play with the designs ahead of time. Often I tend to design characters on I feel weird. It's like doing a costume fitting for the superhero movies when you get the still shots ahead of time.
Yeah.
People see the costume and they kind of complain because it doesn't look good, because they're seeing it out of context. And I feel that's how I draw characters. I have a hard time designing characters out of context. So I'll usually do a few passes in a sketchbook, but oftentimes they don't really become their own character till I actually have them interacting with the scenery and other characters. And you'll often see little ticks or elements of the characters change, whether it be the way their clothing sits, or maybe like their nose might slightly change shape after a couple of drawings. And I usually find that usually takes maybe 40 to 60 pages of an ongoing for that to kind of happen for me. If I've done a graphic novel, I usually go back in and I'll correct things afterwards.
Yeah.
But So they're definitely, and as new characters are introduced in the scripts, Chip will do the same, more notes, and I'll just design them on the page as we go through.
So it's about 2 or 3 full issues before you're settled in and you're like, yeah, got this. This is where I'm at.
I find that, I find it's because I also I don't tend to draw the same for everything I work on. I tend to shift around a little bit. Just because I like to find the vibe or the voice of the book. And by experimenting that way, usually the first little bit is me trying to get into that saddle and figure out the look and feel of the book. And I think John, our editor, mentioned this when I handed in issue 3. He kind of was like, "This is the best issue so far." And for me, that I felt the same way. It was like, because I'd gotten into the characters, and you can even see that with Mike and his colors. Like, he did a great job on the first couple issues, but he really hits his stride because he's found the look he wants now after us shutting up a little bit. and him going on ahead, he's really created something awesome as well. So I think it's just like anything, you're just getting comfortable with the characters and the look, feel, and even I bet you their dialogue for Chip would probably morph and change as he writes them more.
I've got to say,
for sure.
hearing issue 3 is the best issue so far. It's such a tease because I was able to read up to issue 2, and so now I've got to wait 2 months before I can finally get to issue 3. And I don't want this to really sound like a commercial, but the book came out yesterday. It's phenomenal. In fact, I was reading it so obviously we could discuss it, and I was on my back patio, and there's a moment that happens in the first issue that I was like, oh, so loud, that my wife in the living room had to come out and was like, hey, is everything okay? And I was like, yeah, just something happened in this comic.
That's perfect.
That's awesome.
I mean, I'm pretty sure that's what you guys were going for. The way you guys laid out that page is like, you're just like, we're like 8 pages in. What is happening already?
That's awesome.
But yeah, no, it's a phenomenal book. It came out yesterday. If you haven't picked up a copy, you should definitely be swinging by your local comic shop, specifically Coliseum of Comics, to grab a copy. But yeah, let's talk about this. You guys had mentioned that Skybound had asked for like some scripts to be done ahead of time. Issue 3 has already been submitted. Like how many issues are in the can?
I think at this point you're drawing issue 6 right now, right?
Yeah, I'm just wrapping issue 6, and Mike's I think just finished coloring or is in the middle of coloring 5.
Yeah, and I've written 7, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the intention is we're doing an ongoing, right?
Pardon?
Yeah, he was asking if it was ongoing. I basically have kind of the first large story kind of figured out, and that endpoint can lead into another story,
right?
Or it could be the end. So it depends on how we're feeling about it, and how Skybound's feeling about it. Though Ramon mentioned earlier that I've ramped things up a fair amount. Like at first, I was playing this book out to be kind of a real slow kind of build.
Yeah.
But as the art was coming in, like I kind of wanted to see the characters doing more.
Sure.
Just because they look so great, I'm like, oh, it'd be great if we could,
sure, accelerate
the story. Who could do that? I'm like, oh, it's me. So I found I've had a lot more kind of cliffhanger kind of issues.
Yeah, there's definitely a build as like I like it's like a slow burn, I think, for the first little bit, and then it kind of just ramps up really nice, and it's nice to see that kind of.
If you guys are calling those first few issues a slow burn, like I can't wait to see what happens when this book takes off.
Oh yeah, it's definitely.
Oh yeah.
So I don't know, like, so I've kind of thrown my original plan a little bit out the window in terms of like the pacing of the issue. So yeah, we'll see how far along we go before. Before you run out of story.
I'm not going to spoil anything, but I mean, even the end of issue 2, you're like, are you kidding? That's how we're ending in this. This is, I don't get an answer. Yeah. This is what happens. No, it's a phenomenal book. I'm probably going to say this 10 more times while we talk today, but people need to go to their LCS. They need to pick up a copy of this book.
Look, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you fellas would agree, but as somebody that works at an LCS, I'm saying like this is the book of the week, at least for me.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Thank you.
So obviously Chip, you're doing some other stuff, Daredevil. We kind of talked for a moment about Spider-Man Life Story, which is like was that 2018 or 2019? It's 2018, right?
It was last year. Yeah.
Yeah. That is without
time
a doubt.
Means nothing now, so who knows?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But for me, that was the Spider-Man story I wanted to read since I was like 10 years old. And so you writing that book with Mark Bagley, part of my job is selling comics, obviously. I've probably hand sold more of that trade than like almost any other book. And I'm not even a huge Spider-Man guy.
Well, one of the nice things going into that project was, the way I pitched it was this is a standalone thing. Like sometimes it's hard in a comic shop to be like, oh, this is the Spider-Man trade you need.
Right.
When, it's 70 years or whatever of that character.
Yeah.
So having a full story that also, again, is his life story, felt like a bit of a no-brainer in terms of like a thing that you could kind of keep selling customers kind of year in, year out. So I'm glad it worked. People seem to really enjoy it, which is awesome.
Yeah, no, it was like I said, it was probably my favorite book that year, and I'm always excited when I can get it into somebody else's hands so they can read it and be like, and I always tell them like these are kind of like the quick hits of Spider-Man. So if you see something that happens in this book and you think it's cool, come back and talk to us because I can find you the story that concept was based on.
Yeah, that's cool. I never even considered that. Yeah, it could
Yes.
be a
So it's
thing to
like,
get people into other books.
here's like Craven's Last Hunt or Secret
Yeah.
Wars or, and then Ramon, I can't not mention you because we have some people on staff that are actual big fans of like Jane and things like that.
Oh, thanks.
So let's talk about this. How did you get into comics? Like, where do you start?
You mean as in you mean professionally,
Yeah,
or
professionally. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Not like high school lunchtime, like, or like, study hall, just scribbling. Like, when are you like, okay, I'm doing this?
it's funny because I worked. I've been all over the place. I always loved comics. I did graphic novels for RPG companies before I did comics for comics' sake, and then I did
Okay.
web comics before I did comics for comics' sake. So I've done comics a lot over the years. Actually, when I joined the studio, I don't think I'd worked. I think a smaller publisher, a local publisher, like Speakeasy. They were quite.
So
Remember
Speakeasy.
them?
Yep, I remember
But when I first met Chip, he was doing things like Monster Cops, all this indie
Yeah.
stuff,
Yeah.
and I was doing things like Butternut Squash and a few other things, and then
We were both similar because we were both mostly making our money just doing illustration work.
yeah, I wasn't making a living doing comics, and we did Mocha a couple times in New York
Yeah,
together. And then I slowly started to make my way. I did a job for DC. Didn't go anywhere. I did a couple jobs for Marvel, inking other people.
What was that DC job that didn't go?
Wildcat, JSA Wildcat with like B Play
yeah.
War.
I could have
Yeah,
answered
yeah.
that one.
So a lot of oddball stuff. It was just based on relationships I had with writers like B Clay I knew from cons, Catherine Immonen got me to draw a Captain America book, and all the editors would be like, "Who the hell's this guy? Like, why do you guys want him to work on comics?" And it wasn't till I did Tale of Sand where Archaea, God bless them, gave me free reign to adapt this Lost Henson screenplay where I kind of just went ahead and did my own thing on this book, went crazy. To my benefit, the book did quite well, and that's when my career really started in comics. That's when Marvel called me up and got me to do X-Men with Jason Aaron, and then Hawkeye with Lemire, and but I found they didn't really know what to do with me a lot. They would put me in different books here and there. It'd often be a team up request by the writer or something, and then Jane came about as a result of once again Tale of Sand, working with Aline Brosh McKenna, the screenwriter. It's been a very interesting career, but I kind of love it. I love doing the indie scene. I actually prefer doing things like Stillwater or Tale of Sand over the superhero stuff. Like I love the superhero stuff, but I find you're kind of locked in sometimes.
Sure.
With how you can approach, at least the situations I've been in, anyways.
Well, I like you've been able to do the kind of the one-off things. Like, I mean, helping me out at Marvel 2-in-1 was great, but like you just did the size X-Men Magneto
Yep.
book.
I actually love stuff like that. I actually realized once I signed an exclusive with Marvel for a year or whatever it was, or 2 years it was, I wasn't the guy who should be doing a month-to-month superhero book where I'm not involved in like the creative process.
Yeah.
Sure.
Doing a long form story like Stillwater where I'm actually can sit down and Chip and I have gotten together a few times, talked about story and cover ideas and stuff. I like being involved, and that's the beauty of the Skybound project and collaborating with Chip and even Mike and John, and getting the whole feel for the book. But yeah, so I love dropping into Marvel or DC if I can and doing like a 4-issue mini or a 6th issue or a one shot. I love doing that.
Yeah. How was it working on that X-Men one shot?
Oh, it was funny because I did the X-Men one shot and I did the Captain America one shot back to back. And
because you did the snapshot, right?
One was a full dense script and the other one was a paragraph. And
yeah. I was going to ask because like Hickman wrote that one.
Yeah, I got about maybe 4 paragraphs for the whole issue. And which I love. It just allows you to do something completely different. It allows you to pace it out as an artist, play with double page spreads, do things that maybe the writer might not think of because they're thinking it more in a panel to panel. So it was actually great. I had fun on both projects because the Captain America one was fantastically written as well, and like a timepiece set in the 70s. So they both pulled different creative strings, you know what I mean? But I love doing that kind of stuff for Marvel. If they had me come back and do issues here or there, one shots, I'd be more than happy to do that while working on an ongoing like Stillwater. That kind of keeps me excited from month to month, and then you can get a cherry on top with something different every so often, every few months.
I love how Chip jumped in. He's like, "I'm doing this interview now. It's my show."
No, I'm always curious because I know like with Hickman, I got to read a bunch of his scripts when House of X and Powers of 10 were starting out.
Sure.
And they were like full scripts.
That's
but
what
I would talk to some of his co-creators on like his image books, and they were like, "Yeah, I get a paragraph or two, and then I just go and I do it, and then he turns into something just magical."
That's wild to me because like his books and I don't mean this in a disparaging way because I'm a huge Jonathan Hickman fan.
Yeah.
Obviously you guys both know him, so if you want to pass that along, like, hey, this guy in Florida really likes you.
Sure.
That being said, his books are dense. Like the stories are dense. There's a lot going on in there. So to hear that his scripts are just like, hey, here's a few paragraphs, go have fun. Like that's weird.
They can be, but again, like the X-Men scripts I've read are very dense. So yeah, he's got a few different modes of working. I think
it's also the artist you're working with, and you can trust them to do.
Yeah, and like if you're setting up a new thing, like obviously the launch of the X stuff, he had to be very specific to kind of create the world and the tone. But once you're on like issue 30 of East of West or whatever, it's like, like each other well enough.
Right. Exactly.
I don't know if I would feel guilty or liberated in writing that way for you.
I mean, it's funny because I worked on when I did the book with Jason Aaron, the X-Men, with Wolverine and the X-Men. He asked me how I wanted the scripts, and I was like, I told him I was comfortable either way, but I like the freedom of less panel breakdowns or even page turns. So he basically wrote the script, but without any page breaks or panel breaks. So almost like a free-form script, like a movie script, I guess, if you want to say, like change scene, change this, change that. But and it was actually kind of an interesting medium. Working that way, so I had the dialogue, which unlike the Hickman script for the Magneto annual, I had no dialogue whatsoever. I had suggestions about what they were talking about, but no real. Like I still don't know. I haven't received my comps yet, so I have no idea what the actual story is that I drew.
Wait, didn't that book come out in like July?
Pardon?
Didn't Giant Size Magneto came out in like July, right?
It came out, but sometimes comps take a while to
Gotcha.
To get to you.
Yeah, especially now.
Yeah, especially now. But so by having the actual script, I was actually able to have facial expressions be more accurate rather than like have Magneto have a raised eyebrow and a hand out and maybe he's talking about something. I don't know, but I'm sure Hickman made it work quite wonderfully. It's just by having like a bit of dialogue and just the freedom to chop things up panel wise. Is fun as well. So, I wouldn't feel guilty if you ever want to take a lighter month and. Well,
I like to do it for fight scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think issue 7 or 6 has a fight scene where I said.
Yeah, there's a couple of places. Yeah, you were just like break this down as you want. Yeah.
Yeah, I trust you to do that, and I learned to do that working with Chris Anka on Star-Lord, because like he only had a couple requests on that series. One was he wanted to choreograph his fight scenes. And 2, Star-Lord needed to be shirtless in every issue.
Was that a real request?
Yeah, that was the real request. I didn't really know Chris that well, so I'm just like, oh, okay, sure.
So we do have some questions from people watching. You guys both have worked at Marvel, and you guys now work with Skybound/Image in parentheses. What's the difference between working between the two, like working at Marvel versus working at Skybound or Image?
Well, I would say off the bat, it's the lead time.
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
Like Skybound, because of the success of Walking Dead, I think they have like, and because of like Kirkman's kind of work ethos, like he likes to have a lot in the can.
Mm-hmm.
So like I know even on his own books, like what was the book he put? Oblivion Song.
Oblivion Song, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think he was able to send the retailers like 10 issues fully
I
lettered.
heard the
color.
whole series was done before it was released. From
Oblivion's
my
up, really?
understanding.
I know. I mean that he dropped Die #1 on us like as a surprise. It was like a Beyonce album. We opened our diamond
he
boxes.
does that
and it's just-
too, but like, but you know, they like to have everything kind of really locked in, so so they hit the deadlines, because that's what Walking Dead is really known for. Besides, you know, being a cultural phenomenon, is that it came out very regularly.
Fair. Yeah.
Like Charlie Adler is a machine. Like,
yeah.
He hits those deadlines like nobody's business. And then I think they understand that that's kind of how you maintain a customer base. So for them, they wanted to make sure that we're far enough ahead that that wouldn't be an issue going forward. Not to say that Marvel's just like, oh my God, like we got to do this right now. But plans can shift a lot at Marvel, and publishing so many books that it's kind of hard to get ahead. And because they all interconnect too, like it's not like I can get, you know, 2 years worth of Daredevil like in the can when, you know, stuff happens elsewhere in the Marvel universe, because it's got to tie in somehow, right?
Right.
Like I can't have Daredevil going around New York and everything's fine and New York's destroyed.
I actually slept on your Daredevil run at first, and then I had a customer come in, and this was I love it when customers sell me comics. He's just like, Daredevil, spoiler alert for anybody who's watching, Daredevil beats up Frank Castle and takes the Punisher shirt. And I was just like, all right, I got to see this now. Like, I got to go.
But the twist there is he doesn't know there's a skull on it.
Right. Well, hey, listen, I'm trying not to spoil it all the way.
No. It's like a year old.
So I have another question from Tyler. Tyler wants to know, what was the process like for putting the Prime Minister into that Alpha Flight story you and Chip did for Civil War 2? That's a deep cut.
I don't know why I keep forgetting about that.
That was like our big first collaboration at Marvel. That's right. Yeah.
So Civil War 2 was happening, and an editor, Will Moss at Marvel, just said to me, he's like, hey, let's put some Alpha Flight in here. What's Alpha Flight up to during this? I'm just like, oh man, Alpha Flight. Like every Canadian gets the request to do Alpha Flight.
I was going to ask, is that like Canadianist? Like you guys are
both most Canadians like want to do it. I'm the only one that does not want to. But then I start to think, like I have this weird thing where I've really enjoyed my career in comics, but it doesn't have the kind of the juice that I had when I worked at a newspaper. Because at a newspaper, things change every day. We did like outlandish stunts and fun things. Whereas comics, you just you do the product, you get it out, and you kind of work by yourself, and you don't really get that kind of that juice. And so I had the idea, like, what if we did it about the Prime Minister? Because he just got elected at that point.
Right.
Yeah.
And I have just enough of a connection to the Prime Minister's office through working at the newspaper that I could contact them to see if that's all right. And so the response I got from the communications people was like, we can't say yes. We can't say yes, we approve this, because that's the government of Canada approving a Marvel comic.
Okay.
But we will not stand in your way. Go with God and produce this. Yeah. And thank God Ramon said yes to it, because like there's not a lot of artists who are able to nail likenesses while also retaining the comic book feel.
Sure. And I mean, Justin Trudeau's that's a handsome man right there.
Yeah. But
it was super fun to do, and it took off here in Canada. Like it was a bit of a media thing.
Oh, dude, I missed a flight because I had a BBC interview, and they called me while I was in the lineup to go live, and I was like, "But can I go on?" And they're like, "No, you have to hang up." I'm like, "But it's the BBC." It's like, so I literally missed my flight to a con, and grabbed another flight like 3 hours later at the airport, because I was just like, I can't say no to the BBC.
Yeah,
like,
no, absolutely ridiculous. Not.
There was I don't know if I ever sent you like the Ottawa Citizen, the newspaper, like their editorial cartoon.
Oh yeah, with the picture of the cover on the wall. Is that the one with the?
No, it was Trudeau dressed as a superhero being lifted up by balloons or something. I forget what the caption was, but like ever since I was in that superhero comic, I'm like, oh my God, we're an editorial cartoon, like a political cartoon. I
actually have a clipping of one editorial where they're like walking through the gallery and they have like I think it's Alfred Laurier a painting, and then they have our cover on the wall as done by like I don't know I want to say Donato, but he's no longer around. But it was like a famous, I was like I've achieved my goal now. I mean,
oh, that's amazing. Yeah. Like the right wing media had a field day. Like this guy's wasting his time pretending to be a superhero. Like he had to pose for it or something. But I eventually got the Prime Minister's office eventually sent me a photo. Of the Prime Minister with his feet up on his desk reading the issue.
Oh, that's cool.
They asked us to send some, so I signed some and sent it to him.
I still want to get him to sign one. That's my goal. That's my next goal.
Yeah. He sent me one.
Damn it! The artist always gets shafted on this thing.
Yeah, so, I don't know where it is.
For our bigger speculator customers, would we argue that is the first appearance of Justin Trudeau in the MCU?
Yeah, his dad appeared in a bunch.
Yes, in the original was
Is this a real thing?
Yeah, his dad showed up in X-Men, and his dad showed up in Alpha Flight back in the John Byrne days.
Oh, wow.
So there's precedent, too. Like, in continuity, we could actually have him be...
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Good.
So if you're looking for the first appearance of Justin Trudeau, Civil War #2, the Alpha Flight tie-in. So I have a question from Sarah for you, Ramon. When you read the first script for Stillwater, did anything shock you? Were you excited to draw a specific scene?
For sure. I mean, I had a general idea of the story from Chip. Like we sat down, had a coffee, and he gave me like the idea of the world and what was going to happen. But I actually hadn't read any scripts fully by that point. So when I sat down and read the first issue, I was kind of like going along, then pow, one, and then the next big pow at the end of the issue. I was just like, holy shit! Like, so there definitely was a couple of nice shocker moments like that, and that's the kind of stuff that excites me about working on a book.
Yeah. When
I'm that lured in and invested at the script stage alone, because sometimes you get a script and you read through and it's pretty standard format and you're not too surprised. You enjoy the ride, but when I got sucked into the actual scripts and they lured me in and got me interested in the characters, and then the shocker moments happened, I definitely was like, okay, yeah, I'm hooked now with these characters and what's happening in this town, and now I want to draw their story and get along with their lives and how they interact. So yeah, no, there was definitely those two key moments, which I don't want to spoil, but I'm sure people who have read the issue probably know which two moments I mean. And especially the final one definitely grabbed me really nicely. Like Chip had a great way of just like, it's a nice ride, shit happens, but it's a nice ride, and then it gets dark. And that happened with every issue. He's built on that really nicely every issue, to the point where, like I said, 4 or 5 and now 6, things are really escalating and hitting the fan, if you will. Where you just even as an artist, I'm waiting to find out how things unravel.
I can't wait. If you have any ideas, let me know.
I can't wait.
As Chip mentioned earlier, he's accelerated things. So now, what he told me his plan was maybe like half a year ago has now moved up a little bit on his agenda. So now I'm curious how to see, because of quarantine, we haven't had an opportunity to get together much, but
yeah.
I'm curious to see how things have accelerated and how things move forward.
Which is crazy to me because, like I said, the first issue has a moment that I was just like on my patio reading it, and I'm just like, oh, I'll say crap. My wife comes out to see what's wrong with me, and I'm just like, oh, it's just this comic I'm reading. And then when I get done, and I was like, man, if I only got to read issue 1 today, I'd be pretty mad. And so I go on to read issue 2 because we get the advanced solicit, and I get to the end of issue 2, and I'm like, now I'm mad because I have to wait to read issue 3 now. Like, you guys are killing me. So I can't wait. When you guys say it accelerates, I cannot wait to see what happens.
Yeah, something.
No. Yeah, I love you. I think the end of issue 2 is one of my favorite endings in the earlier issues. Just like, it was a perfect, just like, what?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you think of the horrors that entails being the curse or blessing of the town. I'm just like, I wish, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the fun and like the discussions with Ramon have been about like what are the things that spin out of this kind of immortality curse.
Yeah.
Right.
Like how does it affect the animals, plant life?
Yeah, that's a really good question.
Forms of punishment, like
Yeah. I think it's actually
interactions. Yeah.
there's so much more we could explore that I think you've just scraped the surface so lightly as to what like the positive negatives are of the situation that every time I'm drawing something I'm like, oh, but what if, and I go on my own little side tangents.
Yeah.
You're gonna need all your Walking Dead spin-offs to kind of get all the
Well, see, that's like I think
all the little side stories.
Send them to me. Yeah, like
One with just
a lot
the
I didn't
animals,
think of.
the dogs and cats, and what they're doing over there. You know what I mean?
But I think at least for me as a comics fan, like that's part of the fun of it, right? Like, you guys introduced us to, like in Stillwater, that's a completely, original universe. But like you said, there's all these things like what happens with like, my favorite house cat or, the trees or the plant. Like it's fun kind of picturing or imagine like, Why the Last Man was a big one like that for me. Like, oh, I wonder how this thing was affected, right?
It's funny. Yeah, like that's kind of it's such a small thing, but it's my favorite bit in issue 1, which is the cats and the dogs walking down the street. The cat like walking as a pack.
Yeah.
No rivalry really at that point.
Hanging out.
It's like, was it Bill Murray line from Ghostbusters? Like cats and dogs.
Yeah. When they're in the mayor's office.
But yeah, Ramon just like made that feel so creepy and perfect.
So where does Stillwater come from? This is obviously where I wanted to start, and you guys are great, and we got sidetracked. So like, where is that like? Oh man, this story. Like, where does it start for you?
I mean, it came from like I spent some formative years in a small town. It was like a town called Coldwater, and there was 1,000 people, and we were the outsiders in the town. It was like a kind of a farming community, and my parents were kind of the outcasts. Like they found it hard to kind of make friends, and like my dad was enemies with like the mayor of the town. I was in love with the mayor's daughter. Like it's all that weird small town stuff.
Is this a real story?
This is real, and like,
Okay.
But part of the thing with the small town is like they were behind. Like they were just like a step behind because I'd come from a bigger city, and haircuts, fashion, what the kids were into was just kind of off, right?
Yeah.
Because it hadn't quite hit the town yet. And that kind of thought always kind of stuck with me. And as an adult, revisiting places like that, seeing the hairdos from like 10 years ago, it's like time stands still in a small town. Like that's just the nature of it. And the thought of that kind of prompted me to go, oh, what if it actually did stand still? Like what if they just didn't age? And that kind of prompted this idea. And at first it was kind of like, oh, what a fun magic realism idea. But then the more I thought about them, I'm like, oh no, this is horrific.
Right.
Like, what would they do to kind of keep that a secret? And it's all about kind of the small town,
the edge, that's
kind of mentality of like the outsiders, but ramped up because of this blessing / curse. So it felt like there's a lot to explore there, and I'd never written a horror book before, but there's kind of a lot in common with comedy and horror. So I figured I'd give it a shot.
So, and this is something for you, Ramon. This is my favorite part about doing Coliseum form is if you read something in a comic, you just are like, oh, I don't know the answer to this. I'm actually going to ask you. The town itself, when you went about designing it, like you did a really good job of capturing like that small town like feeling. But then like it's weird because the way you did the houses, they're almost like, New York borough style, like row houses and things like that. Like when you were building that town, like how did you settle on like that kind of architecture for Stillwater?
Well, I think Chip gave me some ideas as to the size of the town, and he kind of drew up a little map of the town itself. And I grew up in a suburb. I live in Toronto right now, which is obviously a major city, but sure. I grew up in a suburb of Toronto. But also, for a while, I grew up in the country outside of the suburb for many years as well, on a small farm. So I've been to that, kind of like Chip said with Coldwater. I've been to that small town downtown and what it looked like, and I've experienced it. And also traveling, quite a bit through the States and Canada, you'll come through obviously tons of small little towns, and they're always the fun stop along the way, the kitschy elements, the time standing still, the whatever it might be. So I just kind of took all those elements from my own past, from Chip's suggestions and my travels, and just tried to mash it up, tried to make it an every town, small town, where you're not sure where it would be.
Right.
Like it's almost like Springfield in The Simpsons.
Yeah.
There's a Springfield in every I think state for the most part. Someone said I can't remember. So I wanted to give it that feel. Like, is this like Maine, or is it over here in like small town Halifax? Like, where is this? But try to pull elements from all of that. Or the center of the town's a little bit built up, has like a nice looking bank, has a nice looking city hall, whatever it might be. But as you spread out from that town, the elements become more rural. I think the only difficulty I've had is, because I'm older, I keep thinking back to the 70s where this time stood still, but really it's probably the 90s, I'm guessing, or the late 80s.
Oh, because you're doing, I see that.
Yeah, because I'm thinking back to my own childhood, so I'm having to bump everything up a little bit. You know, people will be like, why is everybody wearing bell bottoms? What's going on? I'm like, no, I'm like, all right, I gotta.
So that was actually my next question. You kind of pictured all these like small town, middle America kind of areas. Chip, for you, like obviously this comes out of like growing up in Canada in this small country town, but in your head, does this take place in Canada, the U.S., or like is it like, you know, the Simpsons thing where it's like Springfield's anywhere? Like,
it definitely takes place in the U.S. I think there's kind of a mythology about small town America that I kind of want to play into.
Yeah, for sure.
Not that there's a lot of difference between, you know, an American small town and a Canadian one, but it definitely is a part of the story, and also the proximity to, say, New York,
right?
You know, where Daniel was living. It would be a bit weirder for him to cross the border and come into Canada.
Listen, we've all seen Letterkenny. We know you guys' small towns are kind of weird.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
I hear that's a very accurate depiction. No, but I think Ramon, especially, you know, what you were talking about, where it could feel like it's anywhere. I mean, for me, I was like, is this Indiana? Like, it kind of feels like it would be like somewhere in the Midwest, but then like, what city? I mean, he got there from, you know, where the city pretty quickly. But I think that's kind of like what makes it a little scarier too, right? Like, there's this whole element of, you know, where are we? You know, even as readers.
I like stories that could be any town. I mean, you can set it to a specific city, but if a reader can picture it's their own backyard for the most part, I think it kind of, like, for me anyways, it kind of latches on a bit tighter.
For sure, absolutely.
So, you know.
There's where I grew up. There's an Elm Street. And
nice.
I'm a 36-year-old man, and I'm still get the EBGBs from Freddie just because I grew up with an Elm Street. So, no, absolutely. Yeah. So if this is too spoilery, we can skip it. Are we going to find out why the people of Stillwater are the way they are? Like, is that
yes?
Okay. So we get that payoff. Okay.
100%. I can't tell you when.
No, that's okay. That was Ramon. Do you know the answer?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm sealed. I'm sealed. My lips are sealed.
No, that's fine. That was for me. I just needed to know if I was going to get that payoff. Like,
yeah, but it's funny. It's one of those things. It's kind of like I finally remember watching Lost when it was airing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that show. Every week I just derive so much pleasure from it. And then the finale hit, I was like,
okay.
Yeah.
And people were furious. They were like, I wasted all this time watching this. I'm like, no, you didn't. Like, it was a great story.
Yeah.
Like, the payoff maybe wasn't what you wanted.
Yeah.
But it doesn't sully like the
ride,
dozens of hours of entertainment you got watching this thing. So, you know, we do have a payoff to it, but you know, I think you know, the journey is the story itself.
Yeah.
To lead
it. And I think there's actually a couple of, not giving anything away, I think there's a couple of great twists that the payoff can bring too, like in how you decide to end it. Like
Yeah.
You
said too much.
I gotta go.
Chip, Ramon, I know you guys are super busy because you guys are incredible at what you do. So I think we're gonna go ahead and wind this up. Guys, Stillwater in stores at your local comic shop as of yesterday. We've got a ton of copies at Coliseum Comics. I am sure your LCS has tons of copies as well. Go pick up this book, otherwise you're missing out on a gem because it is awesome.
Awesome.
Guys, thank you
very
so
much.
much.
Thank you so much. Great chat.
Yeah. Appreciate it, Billy.